intuited what you were and who you were, and got inside, and out came a thing between writer and actor that was, for me, magical.
Colleen, you mentioned upstairs that you're wearing a dress associated with the history, in fact, with another legendary writer for the series.
I joined the show in '78, and shortly after I joined the show, as Barbara, who came back crawling on her hands and knees begging forgiveness from everyone in town, and I had no idea why because I wasn't there. But shortly after I joined the show, Jerry and Bridget Dobson took over the show and kind of took Barbara and brought in James Stenbeck, the Prince of Sweden, as we know, and shifted focus to a storyline that was new, and there were characters that were new on the page. And shortly after the Dobsons came and brought in the whole Stenbeck storyline and Gunner and everything, a wonderful, beautiful writer came to us who had been around for a very long time, who had been under Erna originally, gotten his start started out as an actor and moved up and eventually came to us and took us through the 80s into the mid-90s, and that was Doug Marland. And Douglas, shortly after he joined the show, took one look at me and said, "I don't think she's that nice." And pretty much, those of you who watched back in those days, overnight Barbara went from being a doormat to a bitch on wheels. And yes, you all remember that.
Didn't you find that in you too? You know, the funny thing is, what Kathy's talking about is so true, because I mean, there were so many times throughout all these years where I would look at a script and go, "How the hell do they know that?"
They tap the phones.
They tap the phones. Anyway, Douglas loved me in orange. And orange was part of my color palette back in those days. And this dress is from about 1985. Oh my God. Don't put a quite so high. It's an old one, and it's a dress that Douglas loved on me, and it kind of went, Maggie's never even seen this thing. It's been in my closet for years. So
Before it was in my closet.
And that's another story. Anyway, I thought it was appropriate to bring out something that had old in history, and these are old Barbara from way back when too, and I just thought it was kind of appropriate to bring some of Douglas along tonight.
That's great, and I don't have anything like that to say. There's old Eileen. That's wonderful.
And Teri and Trent, you joined the cast in the late 90s. Could you just talk about what it was like learning about the legacy and how you went about creating your characters?
It was a little daunting for me because I had watched a different show growing up. Young and the Restless. It's still CBS. So I knew the genre, but I didn't know anything. I mean, I had seen As the World Turns, but hadn't followed it. And I wanted to be able to, I was so excited to be a part of something with such rich history, and I wanted to do it justice, and my mom bought me the book, the 40th anniversary edition, and I was reading through it, looking at my character, looking up all the characters that I would be related to, and then you get there and it's like, it's too much to understand. It's like, wait, you're the brother of her? Wait, how are you guys related? Holden's your cousin, or Holden and Lily, or you find out all these things as you go. I still don't know half of it. But it's just, it was scary. I remember my first day, it went so fast, and I was like done. I got there, I think my scenes were up maybe first or second, and I was done at 11 o'clock that day, and I just...
How did that happen? Brand new up first? I'm sorry.
Maybe not, I just remember it being over and done with, and I was just like, what just happened? What did I do? What did I get myself into? But I felt the same at the beginning too, where I just did not know what to do with this character. I don't think they really knew what to do with Katie. And then Chris came along and I became a bitch on wheels myself. and that's when Trent started. He was my...
Your Svengali.
Yes, my thank God. And we just took off, and the character took off, and we created this comedy together that the writers picked up on, and it's just been the most amazing experience for me ever since.
Yeah, I didn't think about the history too much because I didn't think I was going to be there that long. I thought I was going to be there for a few weeks, and then I think 3 major female characters all went on maternity leave within a 2-month period. This is my theory, and so there was a vacuum. I don't know. I was like, what are we going to do? Put that kid in there. And it was. I realized that they were sort of basing this on All About Eve. And I was Addison DeWitt, she was Eve Harrington, and I thought, well, eventually I'll die or go to prison. But it kept going and going and going and going. So I wasn't related to anyone. So until the end. Surprise! Which is great, by the way.
I always thought you might be related to Lisa, because didn't you marry a Coleman at one point?
Oh, I married so many. And on the show as well.
I can't top that. I guess it was my first, luckily I had her, it was my first foray into television. I was just a theater person, I'll never forget. For me, it's like doing a tech rehearsal every day, because there's like 20 or 30 people out there watching you. Like, they're not there to watch you, they're there to do their jobs. So as an actor, especially if you're doing comedy, that's like death. Because you're like, is this working? Unfortunately, we had a great crew that would come up and take off heads and go, and they're dying, they're production office, they're laughing, they're really saying this. But I'll never get my first day, I think it was with Kathy, your WAK.
That was a laugh.
And I'm coming from the theater, and I don't understand that 2 people can move 6 feet down stage and have a private conversation. Even though everyone else is still on stage. I'm like, and I didn't understand the booms were so sensitive. So I'm sitting here talking like this, and I'm having this conversation very private with Katie, and so I just hear from upstage, shh! And it was Kathy, just telling me, it wasn't me. It was just like, you can lower your voice. My intro into the technology of daytime.
And Van, did you know you were going to break ground when you joined this decade?
I tend to break ground wherever I go. so yeah. No, I did. I mean, with Luke being gay, I didn't know that. But I've never watched a soap before, so I don't think I understood the whole like first gay character thing much. So I thought I was going to be on for about 3 months and go my way. So I was just kind of like the idea of the story was one of the first time that story was being told. Really was not even in my psyche, because I was terrified of being on screen, and it was my first job. I had gotten out of college the year before. I had never been in a studio. I had never been on camera. I had never done any of that stuff. So, I mean, the thought of whether my character would be breaking ground was the furthest thing from my mind. It was more like, why are people putting makeup on me right when I need to go and say my lines, And why do people keep pulling my shirt? But it was wonderful.
I have to ask, Jean, did you know when Van joined what the storyline would be? Or
Oh, yes. Yes.
So you had a sense of where you were going to go?
Yes, I mean, it was something we had talked about for a long time, and I think what was unusual about it and what seemed like the right way to go was, I mean, there have been gay characters on soaps before, including on this show, but not the son of one of the main couples of the show, who was so prominently positioned, and clearly not a, for lack of a better word, throwaway character. You know, he was. So I didn't really think you were going to be around for 3 months. I was we were thinking much more, you know, long term, and how would Luke, you know, figure into the fabric of the show. So yeah, that was, and I think the way we played it probably helped it become as popular and as well accepted as it was, because we did take our time with it. You know, there were long stretches of time as everyone sort of, including the character, especially the character, got used to the idea of you know, his sexuality and his position in the family and among his friends.
That's why you're able to do it on a daytime show.
That's right.
Because you introduce it slowly. You don't just hit people over the head with it.
Right, that's true. And it was, you know, I think it was a year about like Luke figuring it out and the family dealing with it, and then he didn't get a boyfriend for a couple of years. But I think by then the audience was saying, "Hey, how come Luke can't have a boyfriend?" And so that seemed, you know, I think we discussed it at great length. Obviously, that was the right time to do it.
So, you know, both Chris and Jean, you worked on other series. What is unique about As the World Turns, and how you pace the introduction of characters and think about the narrative?
Well, I mean, I think that the remarkable and wonderful thing about this show is how the generations have been preserved, you know, for 54 years, and the families have been preserved, so that, you know, when we tell a story involving one member of the Hughes family, it affects a lot of people, you know, the whole Hughes family and all their offshoots, which are manifold. And I think, you know, it's rare, really. I you know, other shows have done similar things, but not quite to the extent, I think, of this show, the continuity of it. So that makes, you know, we've talked about intergenerational storytelling. It's a wonderful thing when, you know, it's not just one person's story, it's the whole family's story.
So Chris, how do you begin to learn the tradition when you moved over to?
Well, I started as a director on this show, which I think really helped me as a producer, because I got to know them by not being their boss immediately. So
you were bossy.
I was.
You were very pushy. You were frightened to death of you.
Yes, well, yes, I work on that. But I think coming from ABC mostly, where I've been directing before for the last 10 years, I found what was unique about World Turns was that people really talked like they talk. You have a lot on the other shows, very sort of almost bombastic dialogue and very sort of actory sort of stuff, but you just sit and listen to them, and it was very, very real and naturalistic, and that was so accessible to me. I think the hardest thing for me, I found it to be really truly Midwestern, a soap opera. I mean, didn't you, Jean, coming from the Midwest?
Yes.
But I'm an East Coast guy, and so it was a little bit different. But it was, to me, just so unusual. All the families were so interconnected. I agree with Teri. I still can't figure it out. It's that, you know, you start tracing, and he's a cousin, and it goes on endlessly. But what was fascinating was, to me, the style, and I thought that was so great. And what I think over the years has allowed us to do, because it was so real, it has allowed us to try so many other things because it was based in reality. And I think that's what makes it